Will Hild. Mr. Hild is the Executive Director of Consumers Research. Thanks so much for taking time. How are you?
Doing great. Glad to be with you.
Tell us about Consumers Research. Who are you folks and what do you do?
Well, we're the nation's oldest consumer protection organization. We were founded in 1929. We've got a 90-plus year pedigree of educating consumers on issues important to them and amplifying their voice in the marketplace. And for the last 5 years, we've been focused on dismantling the woke capitalism monster, this ESG octopus that's been taking over corporate America and having them focus on woke activists and woke politicians instead of on serving their consumers.
DEI is something that is falling out of favor with smart businesses because they've seen what it has done to their bottom line. But Costco apparently has been doubling down of late, including a big stunt with Reverend Al Sharpton over this past weekend. But the reality is that is a dereliction of duty on the part of the folks running the place with regard to that duty to shareholders.
That's 100% right. It's a betrayal not just of their customers, but also of their legal duty to their shareholders. What happened is you had a activist group put in a shareholder proposal, a conservative activist group, asking the management to put together a report on the dangers, the legal risks of them continuing their hardcore DEI policies within the company that violate a whole host of labor laws. And the company came out, management said absolutely not. Not only are we not going to do this study, we are going to double down. We are going to be doing these events with Al Sharpton, and we are going to double down on these racist, anti-white, anti-male, anti-Asian, anti-Christian policies that really are putting us on a course towards litigation. And the news of that came. The retribution has been swift because you had a 19-state AG coalition send a letter to Costco saying, listen. Our understanding is you're bragging about these racist policies, these discriminatory policies that you've been conducting. You have 30 days to explain yourselves to us. And if you either haven't ceased that activity or can't explain why what you're doing isn't racist, you're going to be looking at a multi-state lawsuit against your company. So it has backfired tremendously quickly.
I don't imagine Reverend Al and his whole group of people made up for what they're going to lose in what they might have bought at Costco the other day. And I don't know that any of them had a membership card. I think you have to go shopping there. But there are a couple of things that you said in there that are very important. And this transcends the Costco conversation. If it's a publicly traded stock company, there are shareholders, and the folks who are running the place have a fiduciary duty to those shareholders. Explain what that means to the average person.
That means that when a CEO or a COO or a CTO works for a company, the person that they really work for is the shareholder. The people that own the stock in the company are who they owe their legal duty to. We have that legal obligation here in the United States to keep corporations focused on serving consumers in order to make money for the shareholders. You don't want them hijacking this business, sometimes these multi-billion-dollar businesses, so that they can use it for their own purposes. And that's really what we've seen with woke capitalism. It's been the managers, not the owners of these businesses, not the customers of these businesses, but the managers who've decided to turn them into political utilities for their own private political agenda or to become an arm of the Democratic Party. That's a legal violation. That's not just obnoxious, although it is that as well. It's a legal violation of the duty that they owe to the shareholders. And so management is not only opening up Costco to lawsuits, they're opening themselves up to lawsuits because they have a duty of care, meaning if you put them on notice, as these state AGs have done, that they need to course correct or they're going to get sued, they have a legal obligation to look at that and say, okay, is what we're doing really going to help the shareholders? And there's just no argument that it is here. So you're completely correct. Not only has management endangered Costco, they've endangered themselves and their own legal liability. And frankly, they ought to be the people who pay first, not the cost, certainly not consumers. It ought to be this boneheaded management that thinks it's more important to be discriminatory towards white people, Christians, Asian employees who studies show get hurt by DEI than it is to actually do their job.
And again, we're talking about preferences based upon race. And it doesn't matter if the preference is in favor of a traditionally disadvantaged group when we're talking about commerce like this. It's not like we're trying to equalize or settle some scores from decades past.
No, and the Supreme Court has ruled multiple times that is the case. Racism is racism, no matter what it is you're trying to accomplish. They just reiterated that position with the Harvard admissions case, where Harvard was putting their thumb on the scale on admissions and racially discriminating against whites and Asians who, based on their scores, should have been admitted before other Hispanics and blacks that they were discriminating in favor of. And in addition to that, this is black letter labor law. This has been in existence since the Civil Rights Act. You cannot have race be even a motivating factor, even if it's not the sole motivating factor. It's not supposed to play a role in hiring at all. And in fact, no less than Mark Cuban, the billionaire, was on Twitter arguing with someone over DEI, and he said, "Listen, it's not the only thing I consider, but I do think about someone's race when I hire someone." And an EEOC commissioner, the people in the federal government, the Equal Opportunity Commission, who are empowered to enforce those rules against race-blind hiring, responded to him and said, "Mark, you are violating the law. If this is an admission of the way you go about hiring, that is in violation of federal law around race and sex discrimination in hiring." So there's just no argument here. What they're doing is against the law.
And again, Mr. Cuban should know the distinction from when he owned the NBA basketball team. You know, there are certain jobs where you can discriminate because, for example, professional basketball, you want people of some height who can shoot. Okay, so there are certain things where the common, ordinary, average person, you know, they're not going to make the team. But we're not talking about that when we're talking about businesses. And that's also why the ESG stuff is so important. I want to ask you about that, but I want to remind the audience first that Will Hild is Executive Director of Consumers Research. He joins us on the Patriot Mobile Newsmaker line on the Todd Starnes program. This ESG stuff, I mean, when these folks who have a fiduciary duty in investments, etc., the fiduciary duty is to maximize investment. And when they are deliberately investing based on things other than maximum return, and you as the person whose money is in the fund don't know it, that, again, is a textbook definition of breach of duty, correct?
You're 100% correct, and I'm glad you brought that up, because the whole ESG woke capitalism complex, the whole grift, is based on this violation of fiduciary duty. If people were doing the job that they were hired to do, that they're legally obligated to do, none of this would be a problem. And it's not just me saying that. American Airlines, just earlier this month, lost a lawsuit. They had hired BlackRock to manage their employees' retirement plan. And BlackRock was using their money, as he's infamous for doing over there. They had used the employees' retirement to push ESG at these companies. And a judge found that was not only a violation of BlackRock's fiduciary duty, but it was a breach of the fiduciary duty that American Airlines owed its employees. They should have been keeping better watch over the job that BlackRock was doing, and now they are in the process of calculating damages. And again, it was another situation where it was really management, because one of the things that the judge found is that there was a conflict of interest between the executives at American and BlackRock, because BlackRock holds so many of the shares of American that there was concern that they would enact vengeance if American Airlines was to fire BlackRock, that they would vote against some of their boards of directors. So it's really, there's so much breach of fiduciary duty here and so much conflict of interest. I'm so glad to see the courts and the attorney generals of these states finally cracking down on this, because that's the only way we're going to get back to what we should have, which is corporations focusing exclusively on their customers in order to make money for their shareholders. That's why we have the fiduciary duty shareholders. It's not even just to make people rich. It's to keep management focused on doing their job.
So well said. Will Hild is Executive Director, Consumers Research. They're online at consumersresearch.org, and there's a nice little subtle donate button, since they are a nonprofit, in the corner of that webpage if you are so inclined. Thanks so much for breaking this